All right, let's go ahead and kick off our Women in Tech series. We're back. This is Gabby with PF Solutions, and today I am with Kandy Beatty. I'm super excited to have her on here. If you want to, Katie, let's go ahead and kick off. If you would tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. So I worked at a company here called Sheets for a few years. It's a convenience store chain, and it just really wasn't what I saw myself doing long term. So I decided I was going to join the Navy. So I joined the Navy for many years, very young. Joined the Navy, saw the world, got out of the Navy, and didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. So I had a lot of supply background and ERP background. And a few years ago, 2014, I had a chance to be featured in Red Book magazine with Michelle Obama. And I got to showcase, they talked about my skills and things that I was good at. But the problem was and still is that female vets are very underemployed. They're underemployed, they're unemployed. It's the highest group there is. So her initiative then was to find out why and to help female vets. And so when that came out, then Wayne Hippo reached out to me and said, hey, let me just help you work on your resume. Maybe it's a resume thing. So he helped me work on my resume. He helped me find job placements. And I got into a company locally here in Altoona that was doing ERP. And it was a great place to get my foot in the door and start working with the ERP that I'm working with now. It's called Acumatica, and learning to implement that for different businesses. So that's really how it all came together then.
Cool. Can you kind of explain, in case our listeners don't know what ERP, can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. It is enterprise resource planning. And so what ERP is it's basically your software for everything in your business, as far as your financials go, your customer management, your distribution, how you're tracking your inventory. You can do different things as far as writing different reports that you want to see on how things are flowing in your business. So ERP is a very robust system. So there's different ERPs that are used in the community in the hemisphere, but the Acumatica is the one that I specifically work with.
Awesome, cool. And that's something. It sounds very robust, as you said, and even thinking like the technology and how robust this industry is, and how it touches everything. I'm learning something new every day. So it's
sure.
Amazing. So when you were in the Navy, you were there for a period of time. Skills, do you think have transferred into to help you with your career outside of the Navy?
Oh my gosh. So I always tell everybody that the Navy was the best thing I did for my life. It taught me structure, first of all. It taught me time management. You cannot be late to anything. It taught me how to be self-paced and work on my own. I don't have to rely on others. Those are kind of some of the softer skills that I've learned, but some of the ones that are really important, especially to where I am now, is learning supply, which is inventory, distribution. The military has their own supply chain, but it also mirrors what's not in the military as far as the civilian world is concerned. So that taught me a lot about how things moved and flowed, purchase orders, and paying bills and receiving bills from customers, and how your customers pay you and things like that. And then the finances as far as the accounting side goes. So a lot of that is what I learned when I was in the military, and it's huge for now, because when I have customers that are doing straight distribution, I understand their processes.
Right. Cool. Yeah. I mean, all of that is great. Time management, that's a huge thing. I mean, in any role that you're in.
Yeah.
So what was that first, where did it click for you that you were first interested in technology? What made you, were you a little kid and you always had an interest? Or was it one day you're oh, I kind of like what I'm doing, let's dive in?
I think it really was when I was in the military. Growing up, I'm older, obviously. We didn't have computers in our house. We didn't grow up with everybody had a computer, a laptop, a phone, a tablet, anything like that. So we didn't have computers. It wasn't something, you had to go to the library in school, right, or the public library to use the computer. So we didn't have them. So when I was in the military and I was on my first deployment and we were using computers to email, and email was just, slowly getting out there. And then we had we had internet, but it was like bandwidth. You could only have internet from certain times where you could, email family. Or the job that I did, I had to put in requisitions for parts that were like casualty parts that the ship needed to keep going. So I think that's when it really like clicked in my head, wow, there's so much that can be done with technology. And the way that the world is going with technology was, to me at that point, as like a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, it's like, wow, that's really crazy. But now it's far beyond that. So
even crazier. And just even I'm thinking like when you said that, like the last 2 years, even like,
oh yeah.
And I've kind of grown up with technology somewhat in our family. Like we had a computer, we had AOL. So I remember being a kid and watching it like die. I love internet. So I remember that, but for you to not even have it in your house, like I'm curious of, and like you've been there for every step of like where we are. But even in the last 2 years, I'm just like how everything is. And I feel like with AI and all of the advancements, like we're only getting further digital.
Exactly.
The metaverse, all of that crazy stuff.
Yep.
So it is super interesting, and I love talking to people that, that lived the lives before technologies, because these younger generations, they're like, without technology, they couldn't imagine a life without that.
They don't understand what it's like when back to not having computers, when you're like, I have to call my friend from the house phone because I can't message them and I can't, so I always laugh with my husband with the kids because they don't understand. They don't know a world without the internet and technology, whereas we do. So it's different seeing generations and even the future generations, like how different the technology will even be for them once the kids now are having kids and that.
Yeah, super interesting. Through your experience through the years in the Navy and other roles that you've been in, have you noticed any resources or like community opportunities, whether that be clubs, organizations, boot camps, any of that type of thing, that you would recommend for just getting into tech? And I know that there's like conferences nowadays and all kinds of stuff, but anything personally that you've been through that you would recommend?
No, I see that like on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn a good bit, and I see there's a lot of companies that offer like free classes and free courses. And I actually signed my daughter up for one recently just for her to start learning to code, just because it's something that she's kind of curious about. So I think just looking for those resources. I don't really use those that much because I'm more focused on what I'm doing now for my job. But I think looking for like the LinkedIn things that they're doing, and there's a lot of free resources. That's where a lot of people do learn to code, is the free resources, and there's schoolings and things like that. But I don't really use them.
Okay. Yeah. My first thought is that free resource.
Yeah.
Like, it's so crazy that is out there, the education. And do you mind if I ask, how old is your daughter?
She's 15.
15. Okay, cool. So she's like trying to figure it out. And I'm not sure if there's Alice, Scratch. Those are kind of.
Yeah, I did see some of those, and but the one that I specifically saw was with like Minecraft, and she likes the Minecraft thing. So I was like, oh, you should go ahead and try this. So she's going to try it when it comes up in June. So
cool. And that's like the perfect age to catch them. Like, I think middle school, high school, like that age is like where they kind of like, if they figure out that they like it, then it's a perfect age to kind of develop into it. And not saying that any age is too late, because one, coming into the tech world, so like very different. But I think that 15 is like yeah. So, and I'm curious, did you always kind of know that you wanted to expose your daughter to tech, now having some, experience in that industry? Or, because you didn't grow up with a house that had internet or a laptop or anything like that. So now that it's there, did you always kind of know that you wanted to assist her and see if she would sit?
No, I think it was always just letting her feel out what she wanted to do. She, kids as they grow and get older, they have 100 different career paths they want to take. She wanted to be a nurse at one time. She wanted to go to the military at one time. She wants to be a writer, but she also wants to be involved in tech. And I told her, well, writing, you could still be in the tech field. Like coding is writing too, because coding writes a story and when you put it together. So I think it's just letting her choose what she wants to do, but just figuring out for her the way to go with what she wants to do. Because I tell her all the time, I say, so many resources, there's so many things that even if you don't know that it's a job, you could make it a job, because jobs that there are now weren't even thought for 50 years ago. Like, even what I do, implementation consultant, nobody did ERP on a computer 50 years ago. So who would have thought this would have been a job, So
Right.
It's just figuring out what is out there and what is applicable to going that way then.
Right. And that reminds me of like, growing up, I've always loved art. And now being exposed to, you can have a career in graphic design, taking your art passion and then somehow implementing it with tech. So I think the opportunities are really endless.
They are.
Yeah.
There's so much more now than there ever was. And it's exciting to see, because you're seeing how the world is changing and how the world's evolving, and there's just so many opportunities now, like you said.
Looking back, what is one thing that you wish you knew when you first kind of got into your career or got into tech? Looking back, after all your experience now, you've done a lot. So what's that thing?
I think one of the things that, and this isn't just in my career now, but this is when I was in the military as well, is not holding on to anything in your head. You don't have to be the only person that knows how to do something. And I learned that when I was on my first deployment in the military, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm the only one that knows how to do this job, so they'll need me forever. Well, when am I ever going to take time off if I'm the only one that knows it? You have to be able to share your knowledge. You have to be able to ask the questions and learn other people's jobs. If somebody's doing something that you think is really cool, you want to ask them, hey, show me what you're doing. That's kind of cool, So I think instead of us, I guess maybe it's a generational thing with myself, but holding on to knowledge didn't help me, because when it was time for me to transfer from that ship to another, I had to train somebody for like a month, because there was just so much I knew that nobody else did. So that didn't help me whatsoever. So I think we need to not hold information to ourselves and just share the knowledge, because you're always going to be needed. There's no way that a company is just going to say, well, we don't need you now because you shared all your knowledge. So I think that's one of the biggest keys that people don't understand. Just share your knowledge, mentor other people, show other people what you're doing.
I love that. And really it goes back to that collaboration. Once you're sharing knowledge, other people start sharing knowledge.
Exactly.
You're learning things, and that's how we come up. That's how technology was created, right? Like innovation, and that goes to that endless. So I love that. That's something that you really kind of reflected on. What would you say is the most exciting part in your career?
For me, the most exciting thing is when I'm implementing something and I'm showing people how things work. And, some people take a little bit longer than others to understand things, but then when somebody gets it and the light bulb goes off, you're like, oh yes, this is what I'm waiting for. I just want your light bulb to go off. And just even now, even after software is implemented with companies, the people trying to figure things out and they can't get it, but then they come to you and ask you and you show them and they're like, oh my gosh, this makes sense. So I think that for me, that's one of the things that I like being able to teach people. I like their light bulbs going off per se. And I like, people understanding how things flow, because you can look at something all day long, but until you understand it, it's not going to sink in. It's not going to work for you. So I think that that's a huge part also.
Okay, so I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit. So obviously, you mentioned that you were in the Navy for a little bit. You've had various careers in tech and that sort of thing. But you're a woman, right? So a woman in the Navy and then also a woman in tech. Tell me your experience and your feelings. What's it like,
So it's crazy. I just had this conversation with my husband a few weeks ago, and I said to him, when I was a woman going to the military, I wanted to just be the best. I didn't care about anything else. I just always wanted to overprove myself. And I did that. I made E5 within 5 years, which is almost unheard of. And I pushed myself to constantly do better, just because as a woman, I didn't want to feel inferior to men just because, for a long time, the military was the good old boys club and it was men based. And even now going to the VA, I'll go to the VA with my husband and people will thank him for his service. And I'm like, hello, like this is the vet, and
right.
So I think it's just, as women, we feel compelled sometimes to overcompensate because we do feel inferior. And even now, I work on a team with all men, and they're phenomenal men, and they're great, and that we're great together. I just still feel the need to overcompensate, and I know it's a me issue, obviously, but I don't ever want to feel like I am not as good as somebody else just because I'm a woman. And that's always been, not only in the tech field, but in the military. And I think a lot of women feel that way. You feel not good enough because you are a woman. But then when I'm doing things and I'm like, oh, I know how to do that. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just as good as the men. And it's not about that, but in the back of your mind as a woman, you still find that though. So I think that that's one of the things that for me has been difficult to overcome in a sense. I'm getting better with it, but it's still overcoming it.
Do you have any advice for any girls, middle or high school, that may be interested in going into the military or even tech? To kind of get a fear or, of being like the only woman. Or, I mean, it's gotten better, thank goodness. It's gotten better the last couple of years.
It has.
But still, we are seeing the numbers from being the only girl to being, okay, now you're 5 and 50 or whatever. Do you have any advice for girls that are interested or in tech or even the military? And just what would you kind of tell them?
Put yourself out there, do it, volunteer for everything, even like in the military, volunteer for the stupid things that you think no one else is going to do, because then that's going to get you your better eval ratings. That's going to get you, a better look when you're up for promotion. Same thing with, when you're in the tech world. The job now that I have, I volunteer all the time to do like blogs, and I do a lot in the community for the software that I work for. Just go in and share your knowledge, or if you don't have the knowledge, start learning it. The software that I work on now, I took nights and weekends and I learned it better than anybody in my last company so that I could be their go-to person. Just, again, it's the overachiever part, but it's also, I want to be somebody that a company can rely on and know that they're getting a good worker when they're getting. So just learn everything you can. Just make yourself a sponge and get all the knowledge that you can. That's what I always do. I'm always about learning. You can never stop learning. Learning is the most important thing in life.
Yeah, definitely. Especially like you said, like you mentioned before, things are ever changing. So you gotta either learn or get left behind, and you don't want to get left behind. Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah. How do you think that we can get more girls interested in tech? I know you're getting your daughter she's expressed some interest, but how do you think that we could get more girls? Because obviously, like I mentioned, I think that middle school, high school is that sweet spot that we should be exposing them. But do you have any ideas that you think that hopefully bring more girls in?
Well, I think that one of the first things that, everybody that we need to show to younger girls and women are, there's so much more to tech than just being a developer, just coding, just things like that. There's project management, there's consulting, there's, like product managers, there's knowing so much more about tech than just, because everybody thinks tech, they think developers automatically. That's where everybody's brain goes to. So I think just girls learning that there's so much more to tech than just being a developer. Not everybody wants to be a developer. Not everybody wants to code. So just that there's more to it than just those few things that are seen as the tech field. I think that's where it needs to start, to be able to show girls that you can do this. This is, it's not the way it was, again, 50 years ago. So.
Right. No, and that's a good thing about how we're seeing more and more women in these leadership roles at these tech companies. And it's not necessarily the developer, but they're, VP of AI and, various things, but we're seeing more and more leadership roles filled with women. And I think that is amazing for these middle school, high school girls to look up to and say, hey, you know what? I could do that. That could be me one day.
Exactly.
So, Awesome. All right, so we're pretty much at the end. Is there any last thing that you want to leave these young girls and guys, anybody interested getting into the tech industry or even the military, anything you want to leave them with?
Network. If you find somebody who's working in a field you're interested in, ask them questions. Everybody's willing to answer questions.
Meet people, and the beautiful thing about LinkedIn now, I mean, that's how I reached out to you. But I mean, how many people, if there's a job that you want, ask them about it. Like you said, reach out, ask, meet people, because maybe you'll find that you like another position more than another. But anywho, that I love that. Great. Thank you so much, Kandy.
You're welcome.
This has been
Thank
great,
you.
and I really appreciate your time. And I'm excited to get this out there. So
Thank you so much.
yeah, and let's stay connected for
All
sure.
right.
All right.
Thank
Talk to you later. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Regardless, so network.
Love that. And that is something that I wish somebody would have told me on day one of college, or even beforehand, is literally connect, get out in the community,